and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project, Season 5, Episode 9. Feeling fine. Good stuff coming down the line just in time. Don't whine and dine. Anyway, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you're still here despite that intro. And today I am happy about the topic that I want to share because I think it ties in pretty nicely to what I talked about last week. And I actually got some pretty decent feedback from last week's episode, which is good. So I think it was helpful. If you didn't hear last week's, I broke down a video that was a collab between Marquez Brownlee and Mr. Who's the Boss on YouTube, two of the biggest tech YouTubers on the platform. And they were talking about the ways that tech companies manipulate the media through things like giveaways and embargoes and just all kinds of things like that. And it was pretty interesting. I know that for most of us, we are not at that, 10 million subscriber level. However, it's something that I thought was important to be aware of as a YouTube creator or a content creator, because you're seeing how things around you are kind of actually happening. And if you're playing that comparison game, you might not even have an accurate comparison of what you're doing, which you shouldn't play the comparison game anyway, because it's a thief of joy, et cetera, et cetera. But also, even just as a viewer and watching stuff and understanding the ways that you could be being manipulated and influenced and all that stuff. So I thought that was interesting, and I got a lot of positive feedback from that, which is really, really cool. And then I just so happened to stumble across a post on Reddit a couple of days ago that I saved, and it's not the same thing, but it's almost like the other end of that. It's a post from somebody with a small YouTube channel who has kind of an interesting background in the world of media and is kind of coming up against it's just sort of coming up against issues as they're growing their channel. And this is a relatively long post. It's actually something I saved. The reason I saved it is because I wanted to talk to Heather about it. But sometimes when we find things that we think are interesting to talk about, we specifically won't show the other person so that we can wait and talk about it on a podcast or a stream or something. So we might end up talking about this on a future episode of The Couples Table. I'm not 100% sure. However, I wanted to break it down here because I had my initial reactions to it. It's a very long post. It's long. It's 3 very, very hefty paragraphs, and there's a lot in here. But I found it so interesting, and so I had my initial reactions to it, and I've been thinking about it, and I kind of want to break it down to have a better understanding of how I feel, and I think it's also something that would be interesting for you to hear, especially for several different reasons. I think if you're anything like me, it's going to make you feel bad, but then in a weird way, it's also going to potentially make you feel better and be comforting. It's sort of a strange, it's just sort of a strange mix of emotions. And I found that really fascinating. And so this was just something I came across the other day. It's in the YouTubers subreddit, which I pop into from time to time. It wasn't a huge post or anything. Just one guy posted it. I'm not going to share his screen name. You could probably go find this post if you wanted, but just the guy who posted this, I don't know. It just feels strange because he's just a guy. And I was interested in his perspective. He doesn't really make any outlandish claims, but he does talk about I've known people here and I've worked in this industry and that kind of thing. And I went through and clicked on his profile and found some previous posts and found that he'd been on Reddit for over 4 years. He's got lots of posts. Very few of them are actually even about YouTube. They're mostly about other things. And from what I can gather, this person had some sort of background in the media industry, then took other careers, and then more recently found themselves unable to work, being home on disability, and then deciding to start a YouTube channel because that's something they wanted to do. He's an older guy, and he had grown up with an affinity for game shows and wanted to do a game show. So his small YouTube channel, which I haven't even seen myself, is based around a game show and just sort of inviting other YouTubers and people on YouTube to play on this game show. And that's kind of it. Just sort of a fun project. But the title of the post says, question, how much of YouTube is actually just payola? And I was like, oh, interesting. There were no responses when I found this post. So I read it, and at the top it has his definition of payola, which I looked up, and it turns out it is like the Google Dictionary definition or the Oxford Dictionary definition of payola. So if you're not familiar with what that is, it is the practice of bribing someone to use their influence or position to promote a particular product or interest. So, I mean, that almost just sounds like something that it sounds like influencership, right? Like paying people to use their to use their position of influence to promote a product or interest. The difference here is that word bribe in the definition, I think does obviously like play towards how authentic and genuine or not the situation is. And also, as the post goes on to explain, how often this stuff is not disclosed. Because there's I don't think you would call it payola if there's a sponsored video, or if if something is very, very clearly being paid for or influenced by a company or a brand. That's just a sponsorship, a partnership, an ad, whatever you want to call it. But if it's not being disclosed, that's where stuff is getting weird. And just this past week, there was a bunch of stuff in the news because Germany passed a law that said influencers and things have to disclose when stuff is being paid for in sponsorship, which was interesting to me that it was such big news, or at least I felt like I saw it popping up all over the place, because those are laws that have been in place in many countries for a long time, including the United States. You have to disclose when you receive something for free, when there's sponsorships. There's no immediate, like, I don't know, detector if a company pays you for something and you don't say that it's paid in your video, or you don't check the little sponsored box. It's not like someone immediately knows, so you could just lie and get away with that. But if you do that and you do then get caught, you're putting yourself at risk. Plus you're just killing your credibility. So don't do that. And technically on YouTube, I know sometimes I get pushback from this, but it's literally what YouTube even says. There's the little, when you upload a video, there's a thing that says this video contains sponsored or promoted pieces or whatever. And it even says there's a little disclaimer down that says, if you received anything of value in exchange for making this video, check this box. And that's what's going to pop up when the video starts. A little thing pops up in the corner that says includes paid promotion or something. And so if your video is sponsored, you're supposed to do that. But technically, even if you receive something for free, if a company sent you a pair of headphones and you make a video about those, you should do it. Even, in some of my cases, we've talked about this kind of thing a lot. If somebody sends something for free and there's no obligation to make a video about it, they just send it, and then I decide I want to make a video about it, technically I still need to click that box because I did receive the thing for free. And even if I disclose that in the video, even if I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, it's important for the people who are watching that to know that they're watching someone who did not get something, who did not pay. If I'm telling you, look, this $400 item is great, they sent it to me for free, even if I would pay for it and believe in it and all that, there's still a difference between me saying I would pay for it and you actually paying for it. And intellectually I can know that difference, but it's just important for the viewer to be aware of that so that they can make a fully informed decision as much as possible. So disclosing these things and being very open about it is very, very important. So what I thought I'd do is kind of like last week, how I played the video and sort of broke it down into parts. I thought I would read this really long post and break it down and sort of like just point out things with it. So we'll just start off here, and it just says, recently, I have been approached by a number of quote-unquote managers of YouTubers who have millions of subscribers and offered me a chance to pay them to have their YouTuber appear on my game show as a contestant, and then they will promote their appearance on my game show to their viewers. Now, as I've been a marketing consultant for decades, I can smell payola from a mile away. I then always asked, what will they tell their viewers I paid them to promote me? And the answer was always, of course not. So that's kind of the crux of this whole thing right here is you have this person who started a YouTube channel that involves a game show, small channel, small game show, but they have a background in marketing and consulting and that sort of stuff, and they're sort of aware of how these things work. they try to connect with YouTubers to have them show up on their show. And they've interacted with managers of YouTubers who say that they'd love to be on the show, or the managers will even reach out to them and say like, hey, this person would love to be on your show. You just need to pay. However, the person will not be disclosing the fact that they were paid to appear on the show. And that is what set this whole post in motion. But there's a few things that I really want to point out there, mainly the idea of YouTube managers, because this may or may not be something you're aware of. If you're familiar with actors and actresses and celebrities and stuff, you probably know they have agents and managers. In the world of YouTube, it turns out a lot of YouTubers also have managers, and there's no like threshold or a point where if you're willing to pay or give someone a cut for what you do, you can get a manager at any size. You could have 5 subscribers, but if you're going to pay the person, I guess they would probably manage you. And in some cases, I actually know a few people who have managers, and it's funny because I've known people who have maybe like 50, 60,000 subscribers and they'll have a manager. And I know other people who have 500,000 or 600,000 subscribers and they do everything on their own. Even know one person with over 1 million who does everything on his own, and it's not even his full-time job. So when I'm talking about things that happen at these levels, it's very broad strokes. It doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. But basically what a manager would do is they would handle all of the sponsorship and the business end of things for the YouTube creator, which could make sense if the person doesn't want to deal with that, if they're not necessarily savvy enough to deal with that. Obviously, there's an opportunity for managers to take advantage of creators by saying, oh, you need me for this. And then it kind of turns out like, well, actually, you just want a cut of the sponsorship deals that you're setting up. I don't actually need you for this because I could set those up. But for some people, they don't want to deal with that. I definitely have a couple of friends who have channels at the point where they have managers, and it's literally just because they don't want to deal with it. They just sort of, it'd be like if I had a manager, which I don't, and gave them my ethics statement, was like, these are my rules, find people who will play within those rules, and then I don't have to worry about it. I just do my thing. And then they come back and say like, hey, here's potential sponsorships. Are you interested in any of these? Here's what you can, and, I can tell them price. I can do that kind of stuff. And it can simplify things, and then they take a percentage cut of it. I have no idea what the percentage is or anything like that. However, I do know information from one, because managers have multiple clients. So one of my friends has a manager, and that manager has a client. I forget the exact number, but it's a YouTube creator who has over 1 million subscribers, which is huge, but also, not the hugest on the platform or anything. And she will not even consider a sponsorship that's under 6 figures. I'm just going to let that sink in for a second. I'm not talking about like a campaign that runs for months. I'm not talking about working for a company. I'm talking about one sponsored video that probably includes like some sponsored social media posts. Will not consider anything that's under 6 figures. So bare minimum is $100,000. I'm laughing because I don't know anyone who's really come close to that amount. It's like an insane amount of money. That's a good annual salary for one thing. And this person uploads, multiple videos a month. We'll say at least weekly because it's sometimes more, sometimes less. So say they do a weekly video. Every video is sponsored. Minimum is $100,000, and there could be more. That's $400,000 a month just from sponsorships. Then there's ad revenue. Then there's affiliate stuff. Then there's who knows whatever else they might have. So you could easily bump that up to over $500,000 a month, which is an insane amount of money. And then you can see why for the manager who gets a percentage of that, oh my gosh, like they're, why would they not want to do that? And I can't fathom those kinds of numbers like in my actual life. And so I don't know why I'm just bringing up like the management thing, and I think that's a crazy story, and I wanted to tell you about it because I think that's crazy. I mean, I would love to make $500,000 a month. Are you kidding me? Especially if I didn't have to like sacrifice ideals or anything. But I don't think that's a thing that's going to happen. And so it's fascinating to me that there are people out there, especially when it could be, and I know I'm being very typecasting right now, but when a lot of the people who are in these situations are like 22-year-olds who have no other life experience and have like never had a job or anything. And it's like I don't know. That's crazy. But anyway, a lot of people have managers and handle that kind of stuff. And some people don't. Like I said, I know people who have channels with over 1 million subscribers who just literally, the videos they make now are the exact same videos they made when they had 10,000 subscribers. They do everything themselves. It's not, even if there's sponsorship stuff, it's things they've worked out on their own. And in my case, I'm a control freak and I love being in charge of everything. And I want to be the one that's in charge of that. And I want to make sure that I'm only considering working with people and companies that are in line with what I do and with my values and my ideals and and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's very important. I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way to approach this. I'm just saying that this is a thing that happens. And so what the person who wrote this Reddit post is now encountering are managers who are promoting the YouTubers they represent as, you can pay them a significant chunk of money and then they will be on your show, but don't worry, they won't tell anyone that you actually paid them to be on your show. So if that's an offer that's being made, that means that's something that's actually happening out there, which means sometimes, and you don't really know, when you see weird collabs or you see someone on another channel, is that something that people just decided to do for fun? Is that a strategic choice that some creators made to just, hey, you do that on your channel, I do this on my channel, let's work together and we'll, both our channels will benefit from it? Or is it something like this where somebody was paid and they are not disclosing that they were paid to participate in something? You almost never really know. So continuing on in this article, the person wrote, will you tell their viewers? And the response has always been, of course not. So he goes on to write, now this is bad, but what was worse was when one big name YouTuber agreed to appear on my game show. He even personally called me and really laid it on thick. And I stupidly ate it all up. Here I am, a small new YouTuber, and this big time YouTuber is praising my game show in numerous ways. I subscribed to his channel for years and naively bought into the public persona he projected. Then, the day I was to record his appearance on my game show, his quote-unquote manager called and said that I would have to pay an appearance fee for the YouTuber to come on. What? How much? $50,000. And get this, he made it out as if this was a steal of a deal. The manager saying he normally charges at least double that, but because he loves your game show so much, he's willing to give you a discount. I said I didn't have that kind of money, just lying about. He said he understood and to call him back when I did have it. I've never called him back, and I never will. I threw away his number so I'd never even be tempted to do such a thing. And that big-time YouTuber who said he just loved my game show has not called me since. So this is weird because it's... in a way, I think you could argue, if you wanted to go devil's advocate, this is just the strategy that this YouTube creator and their manager are taking. So instead of just brand deals and stuff, it's also appearance fees. Okay, fine. That's not something I would be... well, okay, you know what? I was going to say that's not something I would do, but I take that back. If I were to speak at a giant event, I would want to be paid to do that. I wouldn't want to do that for free. It could be a cool opportunity, sure, but if I'm going to spend the time putting together like a big presentation and a talk and going on stage in front of a bunch of people and spending however long, 60 to 90 minutes presenting something, yeah, I'd like to be paid to do that. That's not something I would really want to do for free, plus the time it takes to plan that and travel there and do all that. So I think you could probably consider that an appearance fee. I wouldn't do that to be on somebody else's YouTube channel in like a collab. Like, yeah, I'll be on your channel, pay me to do it. That's not something I would personally do, but the point in drawing that comparison is that it's not an inherently wrong thing. It's just something that, I don't like it. I wouldn't do it, but it's not inherently wrong. The weird part is how, like, pushy the person and the manager are, where they're almost like trying to use the fame and the notoriety to woo people who would be like, oh my God, I can have this big name person on my channel and I just need to pay them $50,000. And then you make it out to be like, oh my gosh, what a steal. That's a crazy deal. And so it's like, it's very business only, because the guy said no, and then they just never heard from him. It's not like he was cursed out. It's not like they got in a big argument or anything. It's just the people disappeared. If you're not going to pay us, we're going to leave. We're going to find someone else who will pay us. So the post goes on to say, and from talking to other successful YouTubers, this isn't anything new. I won't name names, as they were trying to help me understand the YouTube ecosystem, as they put it. In addition to paying hefty fees to do collaborations with more successful YouTubers, or just to give a 5-second shout out from them, all without viewers being told they were paid to do so, and thus that is Payola, they talked about other ways that you have to quote unquote pay to play. One YouTuber admitted that he was going nowhere until he bought fake subscribers, views, likes, comments, and shares. So the first story basically is like, oh, this is crazy and ridiculous. But what has been frustrating this person is they've now encountered this time and time again from people who are at a certain level. I don't know what that level is, if it's a few 100,000, a few million, whatever. But they're coming across people who it's like a pay-to-play thing. You collab with people and you take payment. I will say that I do know of several channels where big-ish YouTuber will find smaller YouTuber and then just genuinely kind of believe in them and want to coach them up. And then you start seeing that smaller YouTuber a lot on the bigger YouTuber's channel as their channel grows, and it sort of seems like they're friends and they're helping each other out. But then it turns out the bigger YouTuber is taking a cut of the ad revenue from the smaller YouTuber as like a coaching fee, which again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with, except that all those times you see the smaller person on the bigger person's channel, you're not necessarily actually watching just two friends hang out and have fun. You're watching somebody promote somebody else because it's now in their interest for that person to grow, because then everybody gets more money. I don't know if that kind of a thing violates any rules. I don't think it does, but it just makes me feel, I think the technical term is icky, because it's icky and like, it's just not, I guess it's not how I would approach it. I'm trying not to cast too much judgment, but it's, oh boy. And then the other thing that gets brought up here is the idea of paying for engagement, paying for subscribers, views, likes, comments. One of the most common pieces of advice you will get when you start out a channel, which is good advice, is never, ever, ever, ever pay for subscribers, views, followers, anything like that. Do not do it. First of all, it's completely against YouTube's terms of service. So it is grounds for your channel being deleted. Second, it's just sad because you're just performing for nobody at that point. Like, I would rather post something that nobody watches, but at least when it gets 2 views, it's 2 humans that watched it, rather than post something and then a bunch of just robots click on it. It's like, what is the point? What's even happening here? There's just a lot. It's bizarre. If you ever go on social media accounts or YouTube channels or something and you see that they have massive numbers of followers, but everything they post gets almost no engagement, which happens sometimes for real. Sometimes, especially if things have been long established and they've built up a big following, but because they've been doing it for so long, some of those people have just moved on. And so you might see someone with a 600,000 subscriber YouTube channel who posts a video that gets 2,000 views. That's not necessarily a sign that anything fishy is happening. That's just sometimes something that can happen when things go on for a long time. But when you see somebody who has a large following, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, whatever, and consistently everything they post, they have 200,000 Instagram followers, but every picture gets 6 likes or, no comments or something, that's weird. Like, it's a weird thing. It should raise some red flags. And so I think every platform bans that kind of thing. But what this person is, it's so hard. But with the person encountered, So the guy who wrote the post, the YouTuber that he's talking about, was basically saying the guy was going nowhere until he bought fake subscribers. And the reason for that is not because like now the numbers were higher because he paid for them. It was because it was a pay to play situation where once he reached a certain level of numbers, then doors opened for him just because of numbers, not because of anything else, but just because of numbers. And it actually gets crazier. So the post goes on to say, he even tutored me on how the best click farms work and gave me the name of the one he used. He says his channel is now successful, but it wasn't until he bought those fake subscribers that bigger YouTubers started doing collaborations with him. I was just curious, so I called the click farm and the sales rep amazed me. He explained how their fake accounts are indistinguishable from real subscribers. All his fake subscribers would have American ISPs from all across the USA. They would randomly watch my videos between certain normal viewing hours. They would randomly stop watching after a while since no one ever watches to the end, and that's a sure sign of a bot. They would randomly and occasionally give videos a like, randomly leave a comment that incorporates the show's name or the channel's name into the comment, and on and on and on. And the price for this high-quality fake subscriber was $1 each. If I wanted 1,000 subscribers, that would cost $1,000, and then I could put him on a retainer, and the fake subscribers would continue to view my videos on a semi-regular basis. So that's a lot of money. So I mean, because 1,000 subscriber channel is not even in the big leagues. It's a big accomplishment. If you have 1,000 subscribers, you should feel proud of that. But in terms of what is going to get on the radar of big companies and those 6-figure sponsorship deals, it's not that. So you're paying $1,000 to get there, and then if you want to keep the engagement going, you're essentially paying $1,000 a month to keep it going, to keep them on retainer. But this is where things get, again, icky being the word, is because I don't know a ton about click farms. A big thing that I know is from the TV series Silicon Valley, because there's a story arc that involves a click farm. And I think at least up until a few years ago, that's what it was. It really was just click farms. Like people would click subscribe, click view, do whatever. And that was pretty easily identifiable because they weren't engaging with content in authentic ways or ways that looked authentic. And so it was easy for platforms to identify that. This sounds a lot more advanced because not only are they changing the ISPs to be from, in this case, he said America, but I'm guessing they could change it to be from wherever your audience is. So wherever your primary audience is, that's where it could look like most of the traffic is coming from. They would pay attention to, if your channel, if you go into your YouTube analytics, you can see when the most popular times are for people to be watching videos on your channel. And so say my popular time is Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's when most of the views happen on my channel, which is actually kind of strange. It's not really what I would expect, but that's just what it is. So if suddenly Saturday and Sunday nights started taking off with insane views, that could happen if the YouTube algorithm for some reason started promoting stuff to different people or different time zones or whatever. But it could also be a sign of suddenly a huge surge in completely different audience behavior, probably a sign that something fishy is happening. So they will keep this in line with what your channel's organic true traffic is. And then they won't like everything or comment on everything. It's just going to be very, it's just going to be very, sporadic and trying to seem natural. It's going to be different amounts of watch time. It's not just going to leave your videos on loop, so you're getting 100% view duration over and over and over again, because that's not how humans actually watch stuff. So that's sad. It's just sad for a lot of reasons, and it's not something you should do. That sounds like it's very hard for platforms to detect. But again, if you were to do something like that and the platform were to find out, they can immediately just, that you can terminate your account. So don't put yourself at risk by doing things like that. But it's just, I guess if you're someone, and I'm assuming if you're listening to this show, like our ideals align pretty well. And so for us, being people who want to make something that we care about, that we're passionate about, that I know the word authentic is becoming cliche, but really is truly like genuine and is authentic, regardless of if it's silly, goofy, serious, low production, high production, whatever it might be. It's authentic and you're building it up on its own terms. So if you're keeping things small and you have a few dozen followers, subscribers, whatever, or you want to grow and you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, it doesn't really matter, because the point is what you're making is authentic. And I can definitely attest that there are people with very large channels who have these same thoughts and these same feelings, and they want to make the best stuff possible, and they want to have fun while they're doing it, and they want to stay true to their ideals. And in a lot of ways that might even be the majority, but unfortunately there's at least, I don't know if it's a loud minority or what, but there's sort of this certain level where you start to, it's like a bizarro world kind of thing, and things just aren't what they seem. It's just not what it appears to be. So we go on now to the next paragraph, where the person writing this goes back to his background as a marketing consultant. And he says, as a marketing consultant, I specialized in barter deals, so I called up a marketing colleague who did social media campaigns. So in a previous life, the person who wrote this was a marketing consultant. They had worked on deals on their own, and so had connections and friends, and called up somebody who is still currently working in social media campaigns. And it says, I told him all of the above, and he just started laughing. He then told me what his marketing firm does to bolster their clients on social media, and says everyone is doing it. He said he personally knows that every network, movie studio, production company, record label, and talent agency, apparently especially talent agencies, does this for all of their properties and talent. There isn't a single TV show, movie, or song that isn't being artificially inflated on YouTube and other social media. It goes on. It gets worse. He jokingly asked me, how could the late night talk shows that are barely surviving in the ratings get huge numbers on YouTube? And this is a quote. Have you ever seen the garbage Jimmy Fallon puts out? No human watches that. Another word for poo is literally what it says in the post. Another word for poo. No one watches that poo. It's all fake so they can say their star is popular on social media. This actually makes a lot of sense, and I can't believe I haven't thought more critically of it. And I'm just sharing my opinion here. So I'm not saying that, network shows and things don't get viewership. They can. But it is weird when you think of, like, I'm going to use The Tonight Show as an example because it's sort of, it's the most well-known name. But when you see a show like that does not crack 1 million in the ratings, typically, and then they post a clip to YouTube and it gets 7 million views, 10 million views, like everything is in 7-digit views. I've noticed that, and I've even had that thought of, like, it's weird that the ratings are low, but the YouTube views are high. And I guess I just didn't think hard enough. And what I thought was, well, they're taking just the interviews, just the comedy skits, just the, the segments here and there, and they're putting it up online, and that's more digestible. Like, people don't want to watch the hour-long talk show, but they would like to watch the 8-minute interview with the celebrity that they like, or I guess they usually don't do musical performances, but maybe they want to see a goofy comedy sketch or whatever. But it never really occurred to me that the numbers are so out of whack. It is a network show. It's not a YouTube produced show like for YouTube. It's primarily produced for network television, and yet the YouTube numbers are so much higher than the network numbers in a lot of those cases. And it just, I just never really thought about it. And I'm sure that there are plenty of cases where it is natural. I watch a lot of like SNL sketches on the official Saturday Night Live channel. I watch lots of Conan, like, you watch those things, and it's not that they're not getting engagement, but the claim here is that they're getting artificial boosts. And literally in this case, the person is saying everyone is doing it for everything. So every big piece of corporate media, whether it's a song, movie, TV show, whatever, is getting artificially boosted. And the biggest perpetuator of that are talent agencies for specific, personalities. So it might be that a show is boosted or whatever, but it also might be that, say, a certain celebrity is on a talk show and that clip is being posted, that the talent agency will boost that specific clip so that, their client, their talent that they represent is the most viewed interview on that show's YouTube channel or something like that, which is, again, not super surprising, but icky. Going back to the word of the day, I'm gonna need to put icky in the title of this episode because that is how it makes me feel. And yeah, so it's all fake so they can say the star is popular on social media. Going on, he said many times that he knows the talent doesn't know this is going on their behalf, and they actually believe they're as popular as social media says they are. It's kind of like a king has no clothes scenario. That's my input, not in the thing. And he says this was done on purpose so as not to hurt the talent's ego or risk them spilling the beans while they're drunk, high, or seeking revenge once they've been used and tossed to the side. He then laughed and told me of a meeting where the network executives were amazed at how popular their TV show was and how the production company said they were too. So this is a recollection of a meeting where a network was like, wow, we can't believe the show is so popular. And the production company was like, I know, crazy, right? The show is super popular. But the guy here says, I asked why that was so funny. And he said both of them didn't know that the other was inflating the show's number on social media. They thought that they were the only ones doing it. So the network was inflating it and the production company was inflating it, but they didn't know that the other was doing it. So it was getting like double inflated. He said that both of them didn't know they were inflating the others. They thought they were the only ones. They knew how much they paid to get a certain amount of popularity on social media and thought the amount of popularity was getting beyond that was real. It wasn't. It was the other party in the room who was paying to make it popular. I asked if he told them this, and he said, hell no, they were both paying us to make that awful show popular on social media. He also chuckled and talked about the movie studios and production companies buying tickets to their own movies on the movie's opening night to inflate their opening weekend numbers to make the movie a hit. It's all fake, my friend. All of it, he said. And then the post ends with the author saying, let me tell you that this has really hurt my morale for doing a YouTube game show. At times now, I wonder if I should even keep releasing videos. So that's the whole post. But it to me, it's so like it's a glimpse into the world that this guy like stumbled into, where he's just starting. He just wants to have a little game show on YouTube, and then he encounters bigger YouTubers who will only interact with him if he pays them, but they're not going to tell people that they're being paid. And then it stumbles into a bigger world of people who are paying for fake engagement, and then it extends beyond the world of YouTube into just popular media in general. And I'm this is not like a heavily researched, I'm reading a Reddit post, so I'm not claiming with 100% factual accuracy that these are things that are happening. However, I also have no reason to doubt this, because the person here is literally like, they're coming to the YouTube subreddit feeling dejected and frustrated and don't like, is this what this platform is? Because if so, like, I don't think I should even continue participating in it. And I feel bad because, so there's two ways I feel. The first way is icky, as I've said, which is probably maybe how you feel after hearing a lot of this, because it's just on something where authenticity is so valued, and especially if you're like me, it's something that you really care about protecting. To hear about just how inauthentic things can be is really disturbing and really like, it's frustrating. And the scary part, like, there's a weird thing, I guess, just with media in general, where it's not a surprise that like, oh, the movie studio paid to somehow inflate their numbers or took a critic's comments out of context. A critic wrote, this is definitely not the best movie ever, and they just took the best movie ever or something like that. For some reason, that's not surprising because you just sort of expect it. But on a platform like YouTube, where so much of it is built around a genuine, authentic connection between the person creating something and the person consuming something, it feels like it's almost more of a violation. And I mean, it literally does violate a lot of terms of services, but it just feels like it's more of a violation. It kind of reminds me of my first job was at a local TV station affiliate. And at the time, this was like over 20 years ago now, but at the time there were only 2 local TV stations. And every year they would submit stuff for the Emmy Awards, which are like the awards that TV shows get. I'm sure you've heard of the Emmys. But I know a lot of people don't live in the US. I don't know how big the Emmys are in other places. So anyway, if you can watch the Emmys on TV, or at least you used to, I don't know if it's it's as big of a show anymore, but it's like, it's a big awards show. There's celebrities and people get trophies and they do acceptance speeches and all that kind of stuff. The local Emmys are not quite that. I don't think there's even a ceremony. I think you just submit your stuff and then you get a letter in the mail. It's like, congratulations, you won. You do get your Emmy trophy. Depending on what category and where you're at, you might go to like a non-televised event that's like during the day at a hotel or something, but it's not the big shindig on TV. Anyway, there was the other local news station one year started this insane ad campaign that ran for almost an entire year about how they were the only Emmy Award winning local news. They were multi-Emmy Award winning. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, their actual intro to their news, like the nightly news, the 5 o'clock news, was like the Emmy Award trophy was like the graphic wipe transition, like whoosh, like it went across screen and it was like live at 5, blah, 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 blah. Like they were really into winning an Emmy, which is fine. You won a big award. Why not? But keep in mind, there were only 2 stations in our area. And my station that year, the person who was supposed to do the submissions, keeping in mind this was 20 years ago, it was not digital, it was sending tapes through the mail, they forgot to make the deadline, like they missed the deadline. So the other station essentially ran unopposed and won every award because there was nobody else that could possibly have won them. Granted, even if there were, they still had a 50% chance of winning everything. But typically in years past, each station would get like an Emmy or 2 for something. And in this case, because our station forgot to submit anything, basically, the other station won everything by default and then was starting to promote it, which they weren't lying. They really did win all the Emmys. Like they really did. And when they were talking about themselves as like the only Emmy Award winning thing this year, multi-Emmy Award winning. It was all very true, but it was also like, there should be kind of an asterisk next to that because people are thinking something, you're telling the truth, but what people are thinking and interpreting from that is a little different from what it actually is. And this just sort of reminds me of that, where there's some of this stuff where it's very clear violations of public trust and platform policies, and there's other things where it's like it's just icky, like it's not wrong, but you just feel, I don't know, it just sort of feels weird, and so that can make you feel kind of bad. But on the other hand, in a way, it's weirdly comforting. Going back to the beginning of this episode, I talked about comparison being the thief of joy. And I actually have a previous episode that's literally titled Comparison is the Thief of Joy. If you're comparing yourself to others, you're really probably hurting yourself. We talked about that. We've talked about staying in your creative lane, all these things. But in a way, this is sort of comforting because I know that sounds weird, but I think it's human nature to want to compare yourself to others. And there are many, many people who are achieving a lot of success on all these different platforms, totally authentically, totally above board, organically, legitimately, and that is very much a thing that happens. But also, looking at stuff like this just reminds me so much of what you might see, and if you feel bad about, if you see those things like that and you feel bad about how much bigger somebody is, how much blah, 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 it might not even be real. Like there might not even be anything there. It really reminds me one of my favorite examples of this is like those magazines at the grocery store that always have some celebrity looking gorgeous on the front of them. And it's, it's like a 50-year-old celebrity with a six pack in the, coming out of the beach or something. And you're like, they're, 50 years old and in amazing shape. And I'm over here feeling like a complete schlub standing in line with like a bag of candy and some chips. And yeah, that person, if you see one of the Avengers cast in real life, like they're not hideous monsters or anything, like there's a certain level of truth to the amount of like fitness and attractiveness that those people have. But also there's an insane amount of photoshopping and an entire team of makeup artists and wardrobe people to make those photos look like that. So even those people who are in those photos on those magazines don't actually look exactly like that. They don't look that perfect. Even the person who it is doesn't look like that. So then when you're a normal person and you're looking at that going like, geez, I feel bad about myself because I don't look like that. It's like, nobody does. That doesn't exist. It's not real. So feel good about who you are and where you're at, and not only should you not play the comparison game, but really be aware that some of the stuff you're comparing yourself to might literally be non-existent and completely fake. And I would be much more impressed by somebody who has 1,000 subscribers that they earned organically rather than someone who has 1 million that they bought for, like, literally bots they bought, who, like, that's not impressive. I'm much more interested in the person who really like slogged it out to get to 1,000 or whatever milestone versus somebody who just whipped out a credit card and paid somebody to violate the YouTube terms of service repeatedly for a couple months or whatever. And I know it's sort of weird that's comforting, but since we've been talking so much this season about numbers and platforms and things like that, it really confirms to me that there's this line you have to walk. And I've been talking about this kind of a lot lately, but there's certain things that are just part of it. So for example, thumbnails are a great example. If you have a really good thumbnail, that can be something that really helps your video to do well. So I don't have any sort of problem or qualm with spending time working on trying to make thumbnails look as good as possible. Yeah, that's playing the game to try to, I guess I could just take a random screenshot and be like, if people really want to watch this, they'll watch it. But, like making a thumbnail that makes your video look appealing so that people want to watch it is fine. Making your good thumbnail and then paying a bunch of fake accounts to like fake watch the video, that's not fine. So, there's those kinds of things here. Or, I'll, I haven't talked about this too much, and I don't really want to because I know a lot of people are fans of it, but I did read the YouTube formula book and I have thoughts about it. There's some genuine, like, practical takeaway advice in there, but at its core, the philosophy is just different from my approach. So it's not even, again, not that it's bad. It's just the philosophy of that book is just grow, grow, grow. And when the book came out, you saw so many people, everybody had it. Everybody was kind of like seeing the praises of it. And that's fine. But the idea there is this is what you do to grow. That's the goal. And if growth and just purely increasing your numbers isn't your goal, but you're in it for some more maybe community building, personal fulfillment, creative, whatever, you might not value growth the highest. And several of the examples in the book have to do with really looking at your analytics, which is true. That's a good thing. I mentioned earlier that I know when my channel gets most views throughout the week. So that's why it's one of the reasons why I upload a video on a weekday morning. Is because I know that's when people are watching my channel. So it makes sense that I would upload the video then. What doesn't make as much sense would be to upload a video on Saturday at 2 a.m. if I can just plainly see that people probably aren't watching my channel at that time. That's just part of it. But a lot of things that the book preaches are things like, if you're making content, I shouldn't say preaches, but some of the examples are things like someone has a channel where they're trying to make content that they think is going to appeal to 25-year-olds, and it's not doing that well, but they look in their analytics and they see that the main audience that's engaging with them are 9-year-olds. So they're going to shift their content to be more appealing to 9-year-olds, and then their growth took off like crazy. And the book pitches those kinds of things as successes because it led to exponential growth. For me, though, that would be a failure because I don't want to make videos for 9-year-olds. So I don't care that I have millions of 9-year-olds watching. There's nothing wrong. If you're 9 and you're listening to this podcast, why? But that's fine. That's not who it's intended for. Like it just isn't for many reasons. And so if the idea of success is to just follow numbers and trends just so you can grow, and who cares about anything else? Who cares what the content's about? Who cares who the audience is? Who cares what the purpose is? Just follow the numbers and grow. Yeah, I mean, that's just not what I'm into it for. And I think that's probably what you're not into this stuff for either, if you're listening to this. And ultimately, what made me feel kind of bummed out about reading that post was that it ultimately led to this person who was doing something that they were having fun with, something they wanted to do, and it led to them feeling disenfranchised with the platform, and then also like, should they even keep going? And so something very important to keep in mind there is that YouTube is so big that you can find examples to prove anything. I mean, you see this all the time. People say like, you should always use tags in your videos, and then they'll find all these channels that have tags that are ranking really high in search. And then other people will say, you don't need tags at all. And they'll find super successful videos that have no tags. Like you can find arguments to support anything in terms of strategy because it's huge. With over 2 billion active users a month, that's very closely coming up on like almost a third of the Earth's population being on this website as registered users, not necessarily creators. The number of people who actually create stuff is significantly smaller than that, but that's a lot. So that just means you're in a very populated space where there's lots of different things happening and lots of people doing things in very different ways and different niches, different genres, different preferences. Like there's so many. Just because someone's not doing things the way you're doing them does not mean you're doing things wrong. And just because someone is seeing success doing something differently does not mean you need to change what you're doing to see success, because the success they have might not even be the success that you want. So I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind. And that's when I see people who feel that way from this kind of stuff, it's like you went into this crazy side of YouTube that is just all about the money, is all about the sponsorship, is all about the idea of, being paid to do stuff and then not disclosing that you're being paid to do it. But there is also another side of it that is not that is authentic, organic, even if it does involve sponsorships, payments, whatever. People are more than upfront about disclosing that and being super clear about it and maintaining the sense of trust and integrity with their audience. Ultimately, I guess as a viewer, you need to be very critical of evaluating who you're giving your time to. Is it somebody that you can trust, that you want to spend your time with? Is it something that you don't, or that you can't trust? And as a creator, it's important to, again, which I just keep beating this drum, have your own internal compass and ideals and stick to that and understand why those things are important to you. So that way, if you were to be tempted by something else, like if somebody said, hey, give me some money and I'll grow your channel. If somebody said, give me some money and I'll appear on your channel and give you a shout out and whatever, you can understand why you might not want to accept that. You can also then not feel bad when you see things, you see quote unquote success, but it's not actually the success that you would want. So that's my diving into a Reddit post for an hour episode. But anyway, I just found that so fascinating, and I had so many thoughts about it, and it's been fun to kind of dissect them, and I'm interested if the time comes to share that with Heather and see what she thinks. Which, I mean, I think I know what she's going to think, but it's interesting to me. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. Speaking of, though, not Payola. I don't know how to transition into things. If you want to support the show legitimately and in a way that I am very clear and open about, there's links in the description both to Patreon, and you can also do YouTube channel memberships. Patreon and YouTube channel memberships have the exact same perks at the exact same prices, so it doesn't matter which one you use. It's just up to you. I know that some people prefer YouTube memberships, some people prefer Patreon, so I wanted to have both there. I'm actually quite happy and proud of like how fleshed out those have become. There's Discord server you can be a part of. There's video podcast posted. There's small update videos. There's members only live streams every once in a while. Like it's been pretty fun. It's been a really cool way to sort of connect. Recently, I started putting names at the end of videos. That's not like an official perk, but I just wanted to try it out. And I've had people message me and say that they really like that. So it's been a fun way to kind of just hone in and connect. And if that's something you want to do, that's a way you can show your support. But as always, the best way to show your support is just to listen. And I appreciate that because you're giving me the most important resource you have, the most valuable resource, which is your time. And speaking of your time, next week we're going to have a good time because I'm going to shift gears entirely. I have gone down this rabbit hole, and I'm kind of understanding why, but I also don't, of we'll call them retro or vintage camcorder collecting. And I want to tell you about those. So next week, if you're a Patreon or channel member, there's definitely going to be a video version of that podcast because I want you to be able to see these cameras and also see through the lenses of these cameras, because I have some really interesting things that I'm super excited about. And I've been fortunate to find ones that are in like crazy good condition at very, very reasonable prices. I guess it's because no one wants them, but I really wanted them. Anyway, much like earlier this year, we did the whole deep dive into when I was buying my new camera, which, beautiful 4K full frame Sony camera, and I was going through Blackmagic and all this stuff. I kind of wanted to have a similar discussion, but about not brand new cameras. So it'll be fun. Even if you don't fancy yourself a camera person, I think you'll get a kick out of it. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. And until then, it's been great to have you here. I hope you had fun listening to stuff today. I hope ultimately, like the real goal in sharing this stuff is to just make you feel better and empowered as a creator of whatever it is that you might make or might want to make, to be able to do what you want to do on your own terms without feeling like you need to compare yourself to somebody else or play somebody else's game. So I hope that's how you feel walking away, and I hope you have a great, happy, healthy, fun rest of your week, and I will see you next time.